Hey there, fiber friends, Sarah here. This is going to be hopefully a quick lab report that is an update on all of the knitting and stitching and crafting that I've been working on in the last little while. And I only have a short period of time and I go for my next round of chemo tomorrow. So I'm going to try and get this all in one take so that hopefully I don't have to do too much time spent editing before I can upload this for you all. So let's dive right in with a couple of finished objects that I haven't showed yet on my channel. First up is the t-shirt that I'm wearing. Not sure what happens in this camera angle when I stand up, but this is the Leiden tee. And I'll just pull up the Ravelry page here. The pattern is by Natalie Sells, and I will put the information, of course, below. And it came out in Pom Pom Quarterly issue 25, which was summer 2018. I knit mine in the Knit Picks Cotton, so that's a cotton linen blend. It's a DK weight yarn. I used mustard seed for the yellow and linen for the cream. And this was a really fun knit. It is worked, and I'll see if we can capture this. Cast it on, knit a triangle here, cast on, knit a triangle here, join the V, work up, and then you get to this section here and you cast all along one side and work it across. And then you pick up all along and knit the next V, cast on along one side, work across. Sides are knit out. Provisional cast on down the back to knit the back towards the sides, join up, work the sleeves in the round. Like, just a lot of fun knitting this shirt. I wouldn't say that it is a particularly difficult knit. You do just need to be comfortable with picking up stitches along a variety of edges, as well as incorporate stitches as you go. So sort of in order to knit horizontally across you knit vertically and then you got to work horizontally across it. You need to be able to pick up those stitches as you work your way across. So if you're a little bit comfortable with any type of modular knitting, if you've done like Stephen West has those triangle modular knitting shawls, if you've done something like that, you can absolutely tackle this tee. You do want to be someone who is comfortable for purling because there is a fair bit of purl bump rows, but also knitting flat. And overall, I am quite pleased with it. I ended up knitting it a little bit less positive ease than the pattern recommended, and I'm happy with that. The only other modification is that I chose not to do I-cord bind-offs. I just bound off in pattern, and I feel that all of my bind-offs sit very nice and flat and flatteringly. So yeah, very happy with this tee. That's what I've got to say about it. Link to the pattern, the designer, and my project page all in the description below. The other finished object that I have, actually there's three, so the next finished object that I have, covering up my very bald chemo head, is the Brownstone Beanie. And this is by, I don't want to say it wrong, I think it's Tina Knits YYC. Alright, I'm glad I got that sorted to double check it. It's Tori Knits YYC. Tori Yu is the designer of this pattern. So I knit mine with Cascade Heritage Silk. It's a, I believe, 75 superwash merino, 85% wool merino, 15% silk. So just a little bit of silk. And the pattern is quite neat. You have a folded brim that is then folded over again to create sort of a very cute, simple slouch beanie. I do really like it. It's just way too warm on my head for summertime wear. We've been having 30-degree weather here in central Alberta, and this hat is going to probably be a lovely Cancer hat when my hair is still short and regrowing come the fall, but just way too hot for wear right now. But it's a really great pattern. If you watched my video where I talked about a sweater fail that I had, I cast this on because it is predominantly straight stockinette knitting in the round with long sections where you don't have to worry about anything. And if you knit too far, it's very simple to knit back. Ask me how I know that. Yeah, pattern is lovely. The crown detail is kind of unique. I've never done crown decreases in the fashion of this pattern. Usually I just do crown decreases evenly dispersed around a circle until you get down to like 8 stitches and then cinch the yarn through. So this was a really different approach on doing the crown of a hat. Happy with it. I've had that yarn in my stash for a very long time, so I was happy to make something of it. And it is one of my favorite colors. So come the fall or winter, this will get lots of use. Right now, it's was just a fun knit. Where did I put? All right, so if you watched, not my last video, I think the second last video on my channel, a couple videos ago, then you know that I had what I declared a sweater fail. And this was the Elwood by Jenny Wiebe, if I'm saying that correctly, which is a cardigan that I have knit in the past, but didn't have a project page for on my Ravelry. This is intended for my new nephew, Callum. This one is going to be gifted tomorrow. So I wanted to use some stash yarn, and I pulled 4 skeins of this yarn here, which is Raven Twist Griffin, which is a Raven Twist Fiber Studios who no longer dyes yarn, but is a superwash merino nylon. I do think it's probably that Knit Picks Swish DK base. It seems very similar to it. I matched it with some Cascade 220 superwash in black, which I know is a little bit of a heavier gauge, but that wasn't the problem. The problem I was having was I found that the pattern was calling for sleeves that to me were a bit too skinny. The other thing is that I didn't love the way the Hudson Bay colors looked on the black background. So when I decided to scrap this guy, I cast it on again, the exact same size, this time on a cream yarn, with those same stripes, those same Hudson Bay blanket color stripes. I knit the same size, but I did increase the number of stitches that I cast on initially between the sleeves so that my sleeves would have a bigger diameter, and I also picked up 4 extra stitches under the arm, and I'm just much more pleased with how this one turned out. It's super cute. It's been washed and blocked. The ends are woven in. I wove most of my ends in as I was knitting them to save time later. Buttons are sewn on, so it is done. I think I knit the 18th month size because I just feel that, you know, newborns in summer don't need like a heavy sweater, and this will be something that serves my nephew better when he gets a bit bigger. Whether he is able to wear that this winter or next remains to be seen, but it's just super adorable. One of these days I gotta knit a Hudson Bay sweater for myself with those blanket color stripes. So very pleased with how this knit turned out, and now that I've showed it to you, I can wrap it up to gift to Callum when we visit tomorrow. So those are the things that I've finished. And now I'll show you some things that I've been working on. One of those things is I have finally started digging into my basket of worn socks that need mending. I have a fair number of hand knit socks for myself, and I have a tendency, and I'll see if it's evident on camera, to wear through the ball of my foot quite quickly on socks. The heels stay great, but this spot right here on the ball of my foot wears out quite fast. I have mended some in the past using a duplicate stitch. If you catch it when you still have some of the yarn left, so you can see this isn't worn completely away. So yeah, I've duplicate stitch mended some socks in the past, but I found it to make it a little bit bulky underfoot. Plus I have entirely too many pairs that I wore all the way through, making them ineligible for a duplicate stitch. So I've been following Creative Visible Mending on Instagram, and I will link below. She also has a beautiful looking book on how to do mending of knitwear. Mine is not beautiful. I have never taken a class. I just, you know, I went off of how I believe it works out and the number of reels that I've seen on Instagram. And I did a traditional darn on the sock. So I just grabbed some stash scrap fingering weight yarn. I put in my vertical yarns, and then I wove back and forth across my horizontal. One is warp, one is weft, and off the top of my head, I don't think I would get that right now. It'd be 50-50. So this guy here is mended, and it wasn't worn all the way through. I could have done duplicate stitch, but I wanted to give this style of mending a try. I should say these socks are the Sisters United socks by Caitlin Hunter of Boylan Knitworks. So I knit these in October of 2019 using Vivid Yarn Studio DK, which is a truly lovely yarn. I believe I actually bought both skeins of this yarn with this pattern in mind. And they make just a really cozy house slipper sock. I've been really sad to have them out of my usual rotation, and so I'm happy to have finally mended one, and I will get around this week hopefully to mending the other. So share that with you. Next up I have a work in progress, and this is with the last yarn that I spun. So I am slowly plugging along with spinning some yarn this year. My plan to spin 23 different yarns in 2023 is out the window. Thank you, breast cancer. But this is that default yarn that I spun, and that video is up on the channel, and I'll link it above and below. And you can see I've got this beautiful, moody, just really yummy 2-ply. It's approximately a sort of worsted, like a heavy DK light worsted weight, and I'm pairing it with some of my own. So this is the same base as my periodic table of yarn. It's just not dyed with it. I believe I dyed this with tea, probably pre-COVID. So I've got 4 skeins of this DK weight yarn for the main color, and I've got one big old skein of the hand spun for the color work of the sheep camp sweater. So this is a sweater pattern by Jennifer Berg, who you can find on Instagram as Native Knitter. Again, all of her links in the description below, as well as to this pattern. And it's a beautiful, sort of very geometric colorwork yoke. I cast it on the second smallest size, which I thought was shocking, but I also don't like too much positive ease. I found that if I put too much positive ease in sweaters, they sit kind of funny across my chest, and I just don't love them. They hang too much in the back. A little bit less positive ease seems to work for me. So I cast on the second size, and I'm just working my way. I'm probably a little bit past halfway down the yoke. When I knit the swatch for this, I was pulling from this section of the yarn up near the top, and there wasn't as much contrast between my light and dark as I might have liked, but I figured it still looked pretty, and low contrast is fine if you're happy with it. And especially the repetitive geometric pattern, your eye will find that pattern as opposed to something more organic. So yeah, so I think that the color work is working out just fine now between the two, and I'm really pleased to have a, you know, I love colorwork knitting. I've said it many, many times on my channel. It really does knit itself, as far as I'm concerned. Like, you're just always one more pattern repeat, one more pattern repeat, one more pattern repeat, and it really flies, and it's super enjoyable for me to knit. Yeah, so I've been working on this just sitting here at my computer for about the past week, and it's just flying. Once we get into that stockinette plain body in what can only be described as sad beige baby color yarn, then it'll probably slow down a bit. But I'm hoping that will correspond with sort of my lowest, worst symptom days of chemo, where my brain can't process anything other than just straight stockinette in the round. So that's where I am on this. And like I said, hopefully I'll be to the sleeve divide before Monday or Tuesday, so that I don't have to worry about math or patterning, and I can just knit stockinette during my foggy week post-chemo. So, sheep camp sweater. This one's been on my to knit list for a very long time, and I'm super excited to showcase some beautiful handspun yarn. I should say the handspun is fiber dyed by Hedgehog Fibers from a fiber club that I did several years ago. Yeah, that's what I've got to tell you about that. The other yarny project that I've been working on pretty consistently are these crochet squares. There is no pattern. This is just a little crochet block that I improvised using fingering weight yarn and whatever my green hook is. It might be a G. I don't have it down here right now. And the inspiration for this project, it will be a baby blanket. I'm expecting my cousin, no, I'm not expecting, my cousin is expecting a baby this summer. And whether the baby gets this blanket this summer or when they're 1 year old is moot. But the project is inspired by this giant collection of blues and green mini skeins that I have from Sea Turtle Fiber Arts. So Sarah is a friend and an amazing dyer, and her Ridley sock base is one of my absolute favorite fingering weight bases. I highly recommend you try that out. I will link her website, of course, below. So that's Sea Turtle Fiber Arts. And Sarah is based out of Calgary. And genuinely, her Ridley sock base, I don't know. Like, you know when you go to a yarn festival and you can kind of tell when dyers are sourcing their yarns from similar people? I don't know anyone else who's dyeing on this base. And it's a real plump. Like a lot of the indie dyed bases I find are in that 460 yards per 100 grams range. This is 400 yards in 115. So it's like a heavier fingering weight, which for socks is great. I find that they hold out longer, they knit up a little bit faster, but I've knit a shawl. I knit the building blocks, I think. I'll pop a picture. If I do editing, I'll pop a picture. If not, I will try and remember to link it below. So I knit a huge Stephen West shawl with this Ridley sock base. Turned out just squishy and amazing. It's just a plump, really lovely base. So definitely check out Sarah. Anyways, a couple years back, she had mini skein grab bags, and I ordered 2, and I got a ton of blues and greens in mine. So when I wanted to do a granny square kind of baby blanket, I thought of the number of blankets I've seen that have been doing this sort of style of block. And I've also thought about a quilter who I follow who does these sea glass quilts, where she cuts little pieces and puts them on a sandy background, and it looks like little bits of sea glass in the sand. I don't know her name off the top of my head. I will link below if I remember, but coincidentally or conveniently enough, Sea Turtle Fiber Arts had on their website a couple skeins of this sand colored Ridley sock base. So they had 2 big skeins and 3 mini skeins of it, which I think should be sufficient for this blanket. And together they're just making these absolutely lovely little blocks that I will assemble in sort of a random color wash. I think I need about 124, which works out to about half of these skeins being needing 7 squares and half of them needing 6. I finished 7 from this first color and had, from a 20 gram mini skein, had about 5 grams left. So there's plenty of yardage in these little 20 gram minis to get 5 or 6 blocks, no problem. And then I've got the sand color for borders and for joining. And yeah, so this is something that I've been just kind of casually plugging along. It takes about 20 minutes to do one block, which is not bad at all. And I'm really quite pleased with how this project is turning out. So happy to be doing a little bit of crochet for the first time in a while, and absolutely adore the way these little blocks look like. But I've got 10 done. 11 maybe? Yeah, 7 and 4. I've got 11 done, and 124 are needed. So this is going to be a long-term project. Oh, and I'm not blocking them. I don't understand people's desire to block their crochet squares, because 2 things. One, crochet sits pretty flat. It's not like knitting. It doesn't want to curl. So I find like you can kind of just tug your square and you know what you're going to get, right? And the stitches are all laying nice and flat, and I would have had no problem crocheting into these stitches to continue in the round. So I shouldn't have any problem crocheting into these stitches here in order to join squares together. So I don't need to block to open up those squares. I don't need to block them to make them lie flat. They lie flat as is. Certainly if it was acrylic, I really wouldn't need to block it. And also, this type of crochet project, it doesn't matter to me if the blanket ends up being a tiny bit bigger or smaller. So blocking to really stretch this, like right now I'm saying it's about, like I did my math for the size of the blanket, just sitting this flat and saying it's 4 inches across. And if it's, I mean, it doesn't stretch that far to begin with. So if I block this to 4 inches, I mean, it already was. If I try and block it to 4.5, it's probably going to spring back. So yeah, I don't understand the appeal. To me, it just seems like extra work and extra waiting. Yeah, I mean, block them if you want to block them, but I'm not blocking my squares. Maybe months from now when I go to assemble, I'll regret that, but right now, not so much. Anyways, the final thing that I have been working on, and I have been working on this quite a bit, and I filmed some of my process, there might be a little video on it, is an English paper piecing hand quilting project. So this guy here is the Heartbreaker mini quilt. Hopefully that's all in frame. This is a Libs Elliott pattern, and I'm using Libs Elliott fabrics to do a color wash down the quilt. And so this is that English paper piecing where you have the fabrics either glue or stitch paste basted, onto a fabric. Oh my gosh, tangling my words. You have the fabric pieces either glue or stitch basted onto a paper, and this is just regular cardstock that I bought at Walmart, and I printed out my shapes on my printer here. And that holds the shape the way that you need it in order to hand stitch the pieces together. You can see I've got my needle still attached, so I was in the middle of getting ready to do this seam. In order to hand stitch, you just hold the seams together like this and whip across the top, trying to catch the fabric but not the paper. And then you add on the next one and the next one. It's a really old technique. It's been picking up a lot of popularity among hand knitters, I find, because it's handwork, right? So you can sit at the couch and assemble pieces the same way you would sit at the couch and knit. So this really, I'm on my last row down here, just squaring off the bottom of the quilt. And this is going to be a cushion cover, or a cushion for my son Alex, because he loves everything rainbows. And yeah, happy with how this is coming on. And hopefully in the next month or so, I will have a finished cushion, because I'll obviously still need to quilt this top and sew it together into a cushion to show you all. So that's what I've got. I've been pretty busy with life, but I have always find time to fit in some stitches every morning and every evening and here or there during the day. I foolishly have forgotten to bring knitting with me to the last couple doctor's appointments, which leaves me wondering what to do with my hands. And I'll probably have, so, you know, the hair is gone, and I have filmed a vlog, sort of diary of that process. That's probably the next thing to expect to see from me here on my channel. I do need to wrap this up so I can go pick my kids up at school. And that's what I've got for you. So, like I said, I just wanted to do a really quick roundup of what I've been working on, what I finished here in my yarn lab to share with you all, and to keep me inspired about making. Thanks for tuning in. Happy knitting, stitching, crocheting, spinning, sewing, quilting, whatever it is you do with fiber, because after all, this is the Yarn Lab. Bye for now.